All right. A very good day to the Global Schools Program community, especially our advocates, alumni, mentors, and also new cohort members who are here today, and also those outside our community. Welcome to our professional development session for March. It has been a very long time. We've seen all of you virtually, and it is good to be done. So, my name is Santa. I'm the project officer for partnerships and events, um, and will be your moderator for today's session. So, today's topic is very much about the community you have around you and inside your school ecosystem. So, community is important because it's part of your teaching and learning resources. And we have an amazing member here, Ms. Alexa Rose Katirani, uh, who would be sharing on how to leverage on community resources for sustainable engagement for your schools. So, we know Alexa, some of you may not know Alexa. So, she is the Group Sustainability Engagement Specialist for International School Partnerships, ISP, former program officer at Global Schools Program. She has experience in teaching in Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia, and also experience as a former environment policy advocate with the USA NGO and Oregon. So let's welcome Alexa. It's already 3 o'clock, and Alexa, to you.
Hi, thanks, Santha. Hi, everyone. So Santha gave me a great introduction, but I'll just give you some highlights on where I got most of this experience from. So I work with the International Schools Partnership, which is a global network of international schools. There's about 100 in our network, and my job is to find ways for students to engage with sustainability. And a lot of the time that means getting the entire community on board. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Give you some tips on that. I also worked with you guys in the project officer position on the education team with the Global Schools Program. Recently took a step back from that, but here I am today. So it doesn't seem to be that I'm actually stopping, but I'm just continuing in a different capacity. And I also was a founding member of something called the Sustainable Earth Dialogue Alliance, SEDA, which is a group of youth environmental activists who are working on ways to get communities to engage with climate change in dialogue that is intersectional. So we're going through different fields and trying to work together to find solutions. So today, what are you really going to get out of this? I'll tell you right up front. So if you feel like this isn't something that's going to be useful for you, you can drop off and nobody will know the difference. But basically, I'm going to give you some strategies to effectively engage with your local stakeholders, and who those might be in a school would be, I don't know, your head of school, your principal, your facilities managers, your parents, your students, the other staff members, anybody that is really attached to your school in any capacity. I'm going to talk about how you might be able to secure funding in different capacities, and how you can get other people to help you to kind of take some of that load off of your plate by fostering collaborative initiatives. Some more actionable methods on the latter end that will help you to build partnerships with other entities, maybe implement sustainable projects that you have been wanting to get off the ground, but not really sure how to do it, and how you're going to create lasting impact instead of those one-off recycling projects that keep repeating themselves year round. So let's get started. And at the end, I'll take some questions and we can discuss some more, but I'll just go through the whole thing. And at the end, we'll do questions so that way you can get as much out of this as possible. So, community engagement. What really is it and why is it important? This is getting everybody in your community to do something related to your project. This is the most collaborative and effective way to get a group to succeed, if that makes sense. So in sustainability, this requires you to take all of your local stakeholders to promote your practices in different ways. This will enhance your resource pool. So you're basically multiplying your skill and your expertise and all the local knowledge that you have by a million, by every single person that you added, because everybody has different contacts, different networks, different skills, different knowledge, expertise, all that. You're also going to increase your impact. So the more people that you get involved, the more amplified your influence is, and the stronger your connections are with your stakeholders. The more community you have, the bigger the community gets. It just kind of amplifies itself as a byproduct. you get more support, you get more advocacy. So you're going to be able to facilitate more advocacy for policies that you would like to implement in your community. You're also going to have more awareness and education being implemented inside of the school, which will enhance sustainable literacy, which is something that will be really helpful when your students are trying to run initiatives. You're also going to get more of a long-term commitment. So when you build this culture of sustainability up, it ensures continuity so that you don't have to keep redoing the process of starting initiatives over and over again. You get the community to take the torch basically and kind of continue on with new groups of students. So sustainability in schools is all about fostering this culture where the decisions and actions are promoting the well-being of the present and future generations while maintaining an ecological balance. So you have a lot of benefits here that you can see. You're going to get financial savings. This is really apparent when you do energy initiatives. So decarbonization strategies will really help your school to get on board because they'll immediately see it in the wallet, right? They'll see that they're saving a lot on their energy bills. This is a really good way to get schools that are more focused on the money side of things engaged. There's a lot of other benefits that come along here, and we'll talk about them a bit more later. But why does this community engagement matters, right? We talked about the long-term commitment. We talked about the educational value in real life, and we talked about enhancing impact and resource access. So I'll go over those in more detail with you later. But there are a couple of things we haven't spoken about, which is the barriers. So a lot of you are probably experiencing something where you're starting to get an initiative off the ground and then you're hitting a wall over and over again. Maybe your principal or the other teachers have a lack of awareness or understanding of why you're doing a certain initiative. Maybe you just don't have the money. That's a huge one. You don't have the resources. Maybe you don't have the capacity. You literally don't have the time in your schedule. Whoops. Maybe you're having a communication issue. This happens a lot when there's international school community. You'll see that some people don't communicate in the same way, even if they're communicating in the same language. So trying to get your words correct, that's a big one. There's skepticism. I've come across school leaders that don't believe that the earth is round, believe it or not. So it really can be skepticism about anything. Maybe they don't think climate change is real. Maybe they don't think that maybe they just don't believe in what you're doing, whatever it might be. And there might be socioeconomic disparities, right? So you might have some students that are leading this initiative that are from a lower income background, and the higher income students don't want to be associated with it because they have some sort of cultural thing going on, whatever it might be. There's going to be a lot of differences across schools. Whatever it might be, there is a way to engage your community and get them to work with you. So what is a community resource? This is really important to define because it's going to come up a lot in the next couple of slides, but this refers to collective assets or expertise. Assets being monetary, maybe it's equipment, maybe it's, the time that somebody has. Expertise would be what skills do you have in your community that people are experts in? Maybe your math teacher is particularly good at one aspect of math that really can help you with something, but doesn't directly relate to sustainability. So kind of take a stock of what kind of experts you have in your community, because there might be more there than you realize. Support available from local neighborhoods. A good example of this is when I did a community garden project with my schools with one of the international schools I worked at. I didn't have any money to start it up at all. So I asked my local neighborhood if they had any seedlings to donate. I got 4 carloads of seedlings donated in one weekend. It was insane. The garden was way too big to keep track of. So you do have your local neighborhood willing to help out, I'm sure. Local organizations, there's a lot of NGOs that have a requirement to spend a certain amount of money on programs every year. And especially towards the end of the financial reporting year, they start frantically searching around for where they can pump their money into, because if they don't, their budget gets lowered the next year. So that's really worth looking into as well. Businesses as well have the same problem where they have a sustainability or maybe they have a CSR, so community engagement kind of budget that they do to get tax breaks. And if they don't use up those funds, then they have to pay more taxes. So there are funds available through businesses. You can also use businesses as a way to give students a more real world learning example. Maybe you can invite somebody in from an oil company and they can talk about what it is they do, and that gives students more of an in-depth insight into how oil companies operate, and maybe they can go work for one and change it in the future, or they can work against it, whatever it might be they're going to choose to do. We can help them to think about it in a more sustainable way. The way that you should approach these different resources, asking for their input, their help, their time, is more about contributing to a shared goal. So you're kind of building a narrative for what sustainability in schools is. And you being a part of the Global Schools Network, or Global Schools program, means you're already a part of an international story that you can just take that template and use when you're approaching all these businesses, all these organizations, local neighborhood communities, whatever it might be, to engage with those resources. So how can you utilize these different things, right? You can get volunteers from your community, although I will highly encourage you to look up your local safeguarding protocols for each school that you're in. Make sure that you're not inviting people onto your campus that are not okay to be on a campus, right? You have to get them cleared first. That's really important. But you can get volunteers to help you out. You can approach local universities that have teaching colleges, and you can say, hey, why don't we partner up and give your students some real world teaching experience by coming in and helping me with this program. That's a really good way to go about it. You can have partnerships with NGOs where you have the students raise money for these organizations while those NGOs are providing skills for your students or other resources. You can get funding, especially from those corporate social responsibility budgets in businesses, especially big corporations. So if you're in an area that has a lot of big corporations floating around, I would highly encourage you to reach out to those departments because they have a lot of money just sitting there waiting to be used. And expertise. We all know about getting somebody from the big business down the block to come in and give a talk about what they do for Career Day, but think about it in terms of sustainability. Are there any people working in the ESG department at those companies, or maybe they're working in sustainable accounting? We need to show that our students can take a job that is related to sustainability in the future. And since it's such a relatively new field that's becoming more and more popular every day, some of these jobs don't exist. My job didn't exist before last year. I literally am the first person who's ever done this job. So we're creating these jobs now, and our students are going to go into them in the future. The more you bring in the people that are creating those jobs to share with your students what they might be, the more prepared they will be in the future, and the more likely they are that they're going to think about it as a viable career option. So this is a resource that will not only give your students more awareness and education, but it will also give them the opportunity to think about things in a way that maybe has not been available to them before. So you might get better ideas out of it. They might find their own resources. This is something that you can go look for as well. So some examples, right? I mentioned a few before, but local businesses love donating because it's a huge tax break for them. If you need help with $100 or a small fee, but it's just a little bit too much for the students to be able to raise in a short amount of time, send an email out to your local businesses and see if they want to donate to whatever your project is, because chances are, $100 off of their taxes is going to be quite big for them. So I would encourage you to go out there and do that. We've done this before with prizes for sustainability essay competitions, where we gave monetary incentive to the students who were participating. They can also do sponsorships. That's another thing that they can claim on their taxes. Employee volunteering is another thing that they can claim on their taxes, which is a little bit more complicated because you have to go through the process of making sure that they're okay to be on the campus and doing background checks and doing all the safeguarding and stuff that comes along with it. But they can set their own price for how much they're paid for that hour. So they can claim back as much as they want. It's a really incentivized thing for local businesses. So I would encourage you to think about it if you do need more hands on deck for an event or for some kind of program that you just don't have enough teacher capacity for. Nonprofits love to collaborate with schools on educational programs a lot. They really, really love it. Most of them have their own educational programs already built. You can actually even work with them to develop one that is more directed at your school community. I've done that with a few NGOs here in Malaysia, on things like, native populations of Malaysia, things like food security, things like environment and energy, all sorts of different topics. We've gone to different nonprofits and co-developed the educational programs together, which makes you look great as well, because now you've been somebody who's co-developed a program, but it also helps your students to get something that's way more directed at their specific context. Conservation projects are another great one that NGOs like to do. So if you want to get your students out in the field and experiencing nature, NGOs are a great place to reach out. Community outreach events. So if you want to give your students some more political experience in climate advocacy, they can do canvassing activities, etc., that kind of thing, where you can have the students volunteering with the NGO and they're learning about how to work with the community in a more political context. Educational institutions like universities and colleges, if you have any in your local area, fantastic for research partnerships, gives your students great experience in data collection. There's lots of opportunities there, and sustainability for auditing your campus is a good one. And you can have the researchers that they partner with at the university process that data for them. Student internships, so you can use that free student internship labor. If you need more hands on deck, that's always a good one because they get experience and you get help. Joint educational programs is a really good one. That one takes more time to set up, a lot more effort, but in the end, it takes all of the responsibility off of you for maintaining it, because another entity is coming in and running the program on its own. Government agencies are also another way to go. Usually this is the first one that people think of when they're thinking about grants. I'll tell you, these ones are the hardest ones to come by. Winning a grant is like winning the lottery. Honestly, no matter how much work you put into it, realistically, a grant is not going to be the most viable source of income or resource for you. So while I encourage you to submit grants, it does take a lot of work to write them up. Just bear that in mind, but they are there. The government agencies might be able to waive permit fees for you if you're doing some kind of community service. So some places require a permit for you to do a beach cleanup, which is ridiculous, but it's a real thing. So if you happen to live in a place like that, government agencies might be willing to waive the fee for you. You can always reach out and see if they have some kind of program for that. And policy support. So we've had some schools where they actually changed the policy, the environmental policy in their community by banning plastic bags, or maybe they ban plastic straws, something like that. But you can work with those government agencies to draft policy and have your students be the ones that are working on it from the climate advocacy side. These are some really good ideas on that end. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a resource, leveraging a resource in your community that is an entity. This is the kind of stuff that you can go for. So the nitty-gritty of how you really do this is you're going to identify your key stakeholders first, right? Who are these people that are going to be engaged by you for whatever your project is? Say, for example, you have a program in your school where you're trying to get the students to learn how to do an energy audit, and then they're going to work to reduce the energy consumption on their campus through two key strategies, right? Operational, they're gonna, go around and check all the lights, make sure that they are getting turned off at a certain time, and maybe the air conditioning is being left on at too cold of a temperature, something like that. The behavior side would be getting everybody to actually follow those rules. So the stakeholders you're going to identify here are not necessarily going to be parents and families or local businesses. It's going to be teachers, students, facilities workers, your heads of school, people that are physically on the campus, and any outside entity that is using your campus after school hours. Those would be your key stakeholders in that example. When you're mapping your stakeholders, you really need to identify the priorities that you have for your goals, right? So what is this project that you, or this program that you are developing? Who is in charge of it? Who's leading it? What is it that you're trying to achieve, right? And the example I used before with energy reduction, our goal here is to lower our energy usage. So Now that I've identified that my main goal is to lower my energy consumption, I need to determine which stakeholder is going to be most aligned with that goal. Primarily, off the top of my head, I'm thinking facilities managers are going to be number one. Secondarily, who's using the campus the most? It's probably teachers. So your facilities managers and your teachers are going to be your key stakeholders here because they have the most control over what's happening. Your engagement strategies. You need to really think about how it is that you're going to approach somebody. I have trialed this many, many times, and I gotta tell you, if you come at a teacher like a teacher, they're gonna respond like a student that doesn't want to be talked to, like a teacher would talk to them if they're doing something wrong. A really good example of this is we had a school program where we were reducing energy consumption. The biggest contributing factor of this was teachers were leaving their aircon on in their classrooms, and they were leaving for hours at a time and then coming back to a cold room. I get why they were doing that. Of course, you want to come back to a cold room when it's super hot and humid outside, but how do you get teachers to participate in this initiative without making them feel like they're being talked down to by their parent? You know, the more you push, the more you're going to get a pushback. So you have to talk to them in a way that makes more sense to them. If your campus is more monetarily motivated, you could install some kind of incentive for teachers that keep their electricity off in their classroom the longest, whatever it might be. Like, you have to think about what those interests are and what their capabilities are. So if you're requesting them to do something that is not in their capabilities, you're not going to get it done. You need to think about the easiest thing that can be done and how interested they are going to be in that initiative. If they are not interested in it, how are you going to make them interested in it? You need to figure out what it is that they want and find some way to provide that to them in exchange for them doing what you want them to do. You need to build those relationships. So if you're the kind of teacher who's like, no, I teach, I stay in my room and I teach the kids and I don't really interact with my colleagues, this is going to be something you have to flip on its head. You need to be having an ongoing relationship with regular communication, regular collaboration, regular support of other people. The more you support the people in your community, the more willing they are to support you back. So do those little things like go make a copy for them, you know, be the nice guy on campus, because a lot more often than not, you're going to see that people are a lot more willing to help you do a project or give you a resource or go out of their way to do something that might not be the easiest for them if you have helped them before. It sounds manipulative because it is. You are manipulating your community into helping you. And this is a really great way to leverage those resources for your students' benefits. So you're going to become a master manipulator of your entire community, or a really good friend, or both. Who knows? So you get it, obviously now. How do you do it? How are you going to manipulate everybody in your community? Let's find out. So collaboration is a really great way. This makes everybody look really good. If I've learned anything about teachers in the last decade plus I've worked in schools, it's that most of the time, it's very rare you're going to find a teacher who wants to be a teacher forever. At some point in their career, they're going to want to move out of the classroom into, you know, a head of school position, or maybe they want to go into consulting, something else. In order to do that, they need to build up a portfolio of things that show that they have skills outside of teaching. If you're collaborating with your community stakeholders, your teachers, your NGOs, etc., on joint projects that benefit both the school and the local community, you are building up a portfolio of projects for the other teachers in the schools. The teachers in the schools that are not your eco leaders, that are not you guys, are going to be usually the biggest barrier to getting something done. If you do not have teacher support, that's usually where it breaks down. It's either that or you have a head of school who's really not on board. But if you can make them look really good in the newspaper or something like that, they're going to want to be involved. So if you combine the resources of an NGO, a government organization, and a university with your school power, and you bring in a few key people and you tell them, you're the best at this, and I really need your input on this, it will make them feel important. It will make them feel that they are going to have a larger scale impact on their community outside of the school, and it will let them feel valued and give them something to put on their resume later or brag about to their friends. This is a really good way of doing that. The more collaboration you have, the more ability you have to get more names out there, and the more that people see you as a person that can get their name into the mouths of everybody else, the more they're going to want to work with you. That is not just the teachers, but NGOs as well will start to approach you. Governments will start to approach you. Everybody will start to approach you when you are constantly collaborating and showing the collaboration openly. This is where the sharing part comes in. So you've started collaborating with people all over the place, but nobody knew about it. How come they don't know about it? Why aren't they talking about it? That's because you have to share it. You have to literally go out into these shared spaces in your community and be visible. You need to be sharing it on platforms like LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it is that you're using for your school. You can reduce your costs by using shared spaces, like physical shared spaces, instead of your own personal place. You know, if you're using a community center, it might be easier. It depends on what you have available in your community. But you also are expanding the capabilities to implement these practices and these programs that you have developed by sharing it with a wider community. So it won't just be your school that benefits from it. Other schools might also benefit from it. You can share sports fields with community gardens projects, right? So, I mean, nobody likes a football in the rose bushes, but if you have some kind of barrier between the two, you can share the space. If you are coming up against a head of school who is saying that we just don't have a space for you to do a community garden, be like, let's do it in the parking lot. We've done that before at one of my schools and they didn't seem to have a problem with it. So you can share spaces physically. That works. You can use local libraries to invite the community in to have a sustainability workshop or an educational seminar that has multiple schools coming to it and getting education from it, whatever it might be. But sharing is caring, and sharing makes people want to get involved. Donations and sponsorships are your third step. So now everybody knows that you're the go-to gal or the go-to guy in your community when it comes to education for sustainable development. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows that you like to work with people. Now you're going to get that money because everybody knows who you are. So you're securing these goods, these services, the financial support from local businesses, from organizations, or whatever it might be to support your sustainability efforts in your school. This can help to get your heads of school on board and your finance department on board because you're now supplementing their budget. You're actually getting more money and not taking anything away from the school budget. Acquiring those specialized resources builds a really good community goodwill with your finance department, your board, your heads of school, all these upper management positions and the admin positions in your school community are going to be absolutely thrilled that you gave them money instead of asking for more. When you bring something to the table, the next time that you come back and you say, you know, I got a donation for this, but we just don't have enough money to continue it. Can I get, you know, $200 extra in my budget? They'll be so much more willing to give it to you, and they might actually have it available because you saved them money before. So these sorts of things are not just about acquiring money, but acquiring the promise of money in the future and the promise that somebody will help you to find money in the future if you cannot find it yourself or don't have the time for it. A good example of this, one of our schools in our network received a solar panel donation from a local company to support a renewable energy project on their campus. That company that donated the solar panels got to claim the cost of the solar panels on their taxes. They didn't lose anything. They didn't have to pay the tax. So it was win-win for everybody because they got to put their own price on their solar panels, which meant they got to claim as much as they wanted on their taxes. Everybody wins in this situation. Another one would be the corporate social responsibility checks that I have talked about before. Oil companies are huge on this because they want to tell everybody that they are a sustainable company, and we know very well that they are not. So they try to look really good by working with schools and kids and always sustainability initiatives, and they have a whole giant pot of money just waiting to go out there. And you can use that for prize money as competitions in the school. So maybe you can have some kind of entrepreneur competition where the students come up with a sustainable solution for the school, and then the money that they get is going towards building that into the school community. Volunteering and mentorship. So now you have money, you have people on board, you have notoriety, you have everybody all engaged in this, but you just don't have the time. You are tired. You are working way too much already because you're a teacher. You have been doing this for hours and hours and hours every day. How can you make your life easier? Get volunteers, get other people to do this for you. Now you start training the other people how to do this. So there will be people in the community that you will immediately identify as like, I don't have to train you, you can help me. They can become mentors to volunteers to teach them how to continue these programs. This will enhance educational experiences for the students that you identify that are like this by fostering community involvement. They will also build more of a long-term support for these sustainability initiatives. So when you retire or if you move to another school, this program should be able to run without you. Once you have built it up and gotten it off the ground, now you start passing the torch off, and then you can work on another program or you can do whatever you want with your time. But establishing a mentorship program, especially where local professionals in the field are guiding students in these projects or in these career pathways that they have, is really, really impactful, because it not only gives students work experience in that field that they can take with them afterwards, but it gives them more of an incentive to stick with it longer, because, you know, an internship is not as impressive if it's only 3 months, but if it's 3 years, it's technically work experience, right? So we want to have our students and our volunteers and our mentors more engaged with this for longer. It looks great for everybody. Okay. Now we're talking about establishing a successful partnership. This is a lot of trial and error. I will tell you right now, it's not the easiest thing to accomplish, but once you actually get it done, it's so fantastic. It will take so much time off of your plate. Like you will save a lot of headaches for yourself. So first step, now you have your project. You know what your project is. You need to identify those potential partners, and I would use a stakeholder map and then kind of identify where those different seats of potential partnership might sit, and reach out to them, right? So you need to reach out with them with a clear proposal that outlines the benefits of the collaboration of your shared goals and the potential projects that you have in for them. If you are not sure where this goes, you can do a cold call outreach. I've done this recently on my LinkedIn where I just said, hey, I'm looking for people to do a potential partnerships in the realm of sustainability, which is super vague, but a few people have reached out to me and a few things have come out of that. I just was looking for ways to get our schools more engaged with sustainability, not sure on what topic. If you have a specific topic and you have a specific benefit that brings to whoever you're trying to partner with, tell them immediately. Otherwise, they will not entertain even talking to you. So the more information you have, the more benefit you have upfront, the more easily you're going to be able to contact someone. When you have developed this plan with this entity, you need to formalize that agreement. So you need to have an MOU that outlines the roles and the responsibilities and expectations of each partner. That includes you yourself or anybody in your school community and whoever is coming onto your campus to partner with you. If you don't do this, and they're not the best, or their employees are just kind of slacking, you're going to end up doing both parts of the work. Having an MOU is really, really important. Just have AI build one for you, and that's it. They sign it, and then you can be like, hey, you're responsible for this. And if they say, no, I'm not, you can be like, yes, you are. See, I already did it. Always get it written down. Really, really helps out when things start getting shaky. So I encourage you to have everything written down. Planning joint activities. Right off the bat, you should sit down with your partner now that you've established that you guys are partners and you're working together, and you are going to co-create a very detailed plan for a specific sustainability project. This includes timelines, any resources you might need, any KPIs that you're looking for, any ways that you're going to be monitoring the impact of this program. Before you even start, I want you to make the most detailed plan possible. And if it doesn't go exactly to plan, that's fine. But try and get as detailed as possible, because when you get really busy during term paper time or, you know, it's testing time, you're going to forget everything about this because you've got your head neck deep in grading. So you need to have it written down exactly what the next step was, so that it's kind of like a quest log you can go back to and refer to what the next step is if you forget what your direction was. I've made that mistake so many times, and my programs have, wow, they've blossomed into something I didn't even recognize anymore. Luckily, I was able to get it kind of back on track, but it can really get out of hand really quickly if you don't do this. Trust and collaboration. This is super, super important. And I found that the most effective way to go into a conversation about what you're going to do with a potential partner or a potential resource giver is you must assume that they want to work with you. If you go in and you're like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous, maybe they don't want to work with me, chances are they're probably not going to in the end. But if you're like, you want to work with me, I'm here to meet to see if I want to work with you. That attitude is a power play that people use in business all the time. You'll see it a lot with people who are CEOs of companies. Their body language is more relaxed. They'll sit back and they're like, oh no, I mean, you're the one that wants to meet with me. I'm just wanting to see if I even want to talk to you. That's the attitude that you should have, but not too uppity. You want to have open communication. You want to meet with them regularly. If you're doing an ongoing thing, there has to be a mutual respect there, which means you have to respect yourself as well. Do not put yourself down. Being flexible and adaptable can go a long way, but don't do it so much. If somebody's canceled on you 4 times last minute, be done with it. It's going to be like that the entire time. So the more you understand your worth and what you're bringing to the table, the more willing they're going to be to work with you. And the more they're going to want it. That's kind of the law of attraction, right? If you act like you don't really need it, but it would be nice, then it might be more helpful depending on your context. I won't say this works 100% of the time, right? If you're going up to like, I don't know, the United Nations or something like that, big name, and you're like, yeah, you should want to work with me, and you're acting like a big shot, it might not work as well. But most of the time, this works with local businesses. It works in particular with CSR people. So the people who are in charge of the corporate social responsibility budget at big corporations, those guys want to work with you. They want to give you as much money as possible, but you need to have a detailed plan of where it's going to go. So assume when you walk into a meeting with BP Oil, they want to give you money. That's just how much are they going to give you. So now that you've gone to this meeting, you've gotten all these people on board, you have volunteers, you have a program that's working together, you want to make sure that with your potential partners, your goals and objectives are aligned, right? If you want this program that you're building to be a long-term project that goes on beyond your teaching years, you need to make sure that the NGO that you're working with or the government organization you're working with has the same objectives in mind. Otherwise, there will be a natural split in your programs where you can no longer work together, and then it will all fall apart and you'll have to do it again. So you have more flexibility than an NGO does in your goals. So make sure that you align them in the beginning. All of these partners that are involved should have an idea of what the impact that is expected is going to be and how you're going to measure it, as well as the desired outcomes of that program. Try to find common objectives. Maybe it's something that has to do with the mission of your school and the mission of the organization. Maybe it's the values of the particular part of the organization you're working with. Using a collaborative goal setting kind of environment will allow you to engage all these partners in the process and ensure that there's buy-in and commitment to achieving those objectives. If you do not have buy-in, it's over. You have to make sure that every single partner that is on board with this, that's leading it, is bought in. 100% of the time in the programs that we have run with ISP, International Schools Partnership, if the head of school is not bought into the initiative, it is about 50% less likely to do as well. So if you are getting the head of school not bought in, there's a problem. You need to get them first. That's like number one, because the levels of leadership trickle down to the students being bought in. If the students see that your head of school is not bought in, you've already lost. Like nobody's going to be involved in that initiative anymore. Measurable outcomes are really key. This is a really good way to get your heads of school on board, because this is something that they can take back to whoever's in charge of them, whatever the structure of your school district is or whatever. They can show the impact that they're having in their community, in the classroom, on the students' learning, making sure that it has something that is trackable, some kind of quantifiable data set. That is important. So we reduced electricity consumption by 15% over the course of 3 months, which saved us 750,000 ringgit in electricity bill, right? That is something that when a board member hears that, goes, whatever she's doing, give her more money to do it. Whatever he's doing, make sure he has all the support he needs, because he just saved us $750,000, whatever it was. So that sort of thing really, really takes it further and gets everybody bought in. Even if they don't want to be, they'll have to be at a certain point because it's just quantifiably logical to do so. So I have some successful examples for you. We have in Berkeley, California, in the United States, there's something called the Edible Schoolyard Project. The guy who came up with this, awesome guy. Really, he wasn't even in schools to begin with. This started as a neighborhood program. Where he was teaching all of his community members about how to grow food and about the impacts of having a food system that is commercialized, where you don't have food growing in your community, you experience something called food insecurity. This nonprofit organization partnered with schools and built up gardens and kitchen classrooms in the outdoor spaces that were not only used by students, but also community members. So when students would go on things like summer holiday or winter holiday, the community members would come in and start taking care of the garden, and the harvest from those gardens is shared among the community. There's a huge benefit to everybody involved. Community members get to come in and they get to share local history. They get to share local culture as well. They get to talk about how they're preparing food in a way that might be native to the region, whatever it might be. And they're integrating this environmental education into daily curriculum, as each student group has a responsibility to go out into the garden every week to do their part to make sure that they can feed the whole school and the community at large. This works in places where you have a lot of land. More urban classrooms, not gonna work, right? Because if your school building is basically an office building, where are you gonna put a school garden? There's a lot of creative ways that we can do this, but we do have to think about safety first. So if, having a school garden is gonna be something that's unsafe, don't do that, don't go that way. But there are other projects you can do. For example, we have Green School in Bali, Indonesia. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. This is a more large scale project, but you can definitely take stuff from them that can be integrated into your schools no matter where you are. In Green School, it's completely owned by people that are super focused on ESD. They built the entire school using renewable materials. They focused on local architecture. They focused on renewable energy systems, organic gardens, and students engage in this really awesome hands-on learning about sustainability and conservation. Something that people don't know, though, is Green School has a lot of investors. A lot of people have invested in this. They went out and they saw a lot of partnerships from different NGOs, from different government organizations, from different businesses, and they built this up over time. It didn't just pop out of thin air. Green School is the result of what happened over the course of a long time with different partnerships. So if you're more interested about what they do, I encourage you to go to their website and see what programs they have. You might be able to steal some ideas from them and implement it in your own school and see their pathways. Roots and Shoots is a really cool school program in China that is founded by the Jane Goodall Institute. It did have active chapters in other places, but the most active chapters are in Chinese schools. And this is because of the way that they structured it. They had students participate in these one-off drives over and over again, which became cyclical. So, they have recycling drives and community cleanups and wildlife conservation awareness. This is a method that will get your school more actively engaged with ESD as a whole, but will not build long-term programs necessarily. But this will start driving buy-in for sustainability initiatives. So if you wanted to establish a Roots and Shoots chapter in your own school, you could do this very easily. And each department would be responsible for one of these events that they do, and it cycles and cycles and cycles. And once it becomes a normal thing to do this every year, and people are getting excited about the community cleanup week, or they're getting excited about wildlife conservation awareness week, then you can start using that buy-in they have from this program to shift into bigger ones that are more long-lasting, whatever it is that you're trying to design. So actionable steps for doing so, right? We've already talked about this a little bit, but let's put it all together so that when I send you this PowerPoint, you can just look at this slide and understand what it is that we just talked about, right? You identify your objectives. You are going to do a stakeholder analysis to figure out who's going to help you with it. You're going to develop the most detailed plan of your life, and you're going to build those partnerships with those people that you established already. And you're going to communicate and promote this idea to them over and over. you can do it directly at first, or you can build a really good relationship with them, understand what their needs are more, tailor your plan more to fit their needs over time. And then when you feel that the time is right to go in and be like, oh, actually you're having this problem and I have a solution, then that might be more of a realistic way to get them on board immediately. Solving people's problems immediately gets buy-in. So if you can establish what somebody's problem is and you can solve it with your initiative, they're bought in. Nobody likes having problems. So if you can solve it, you're in, you're done. Something that you might want to keep in mind when you're doing your plans is SMART goals. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of these before, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So think about all of these different things when you're setting your goals and building your action plans for how you're going to build a program or who you're going to talk to. If your goal is not SMART, it's probably not going to work out. So make sure that it's SMART. Make sure you have all the information of what you need to do, how to do it, from who, where, how are you going to measure it? All of these things. It's really important to know, especially the measurable part, because the more you can measure it, the more you can share it. Okay, so monitoring and evaluation. How do we measure our projects? A lot of the time they don't get measured because that's a lot of work. This is something you can get the students to do. Make the students do this. Embed it into a science class where they're learning about data collection, or they're learning about how to process data in some way. Make them do surveys and questionnaires, make them do energy and waste audits, make them do the observation reports, that sort of thing, making sure that they're walking around, analyzing the data that they're seeing. Maybe you can have them hold meetings or workshops in the lunchtime so that they can do feedback sessions. We do it because we want to track progress. We want to identify what those challenges are in our community. We want to measure the impact. We want to see if there's any accountability for the things that we're building, and we want to see continuous improvement of it. This is not something you have to do. This is something you should be making the students do. They should be learning how to do this. They should be tracking the progress of their own initiatives, and they should be the ones that are responsible for telling you the summary of what they found. This will help them to develop a lot of great skills in the process, but it will also give them a whole new level of ownership over the program itself. So if they're the ones that are putting all the time and effort into tracking it, they're going to be way more bought in. And when students are super bought in and they're pushing it, it gets the head of school on board immediately, because the kids are doing the work. We don't have to allocate any resources to it, so why not? But also it gets everybody else in the community really involved because they see the students are really excited about it. Use that childlike wonder to manipulate everybody around you to get them to do what you want. That's the best way I'm putting it. Okay, more resources and support. There's a whole long list here, just kind of some stuff from Global Schools as well. We have guides and toolkits on the Global Schools program page. We have educational materials as well. Great team with the advocacy team that's led by Kendra for technical support. So if you need any help with that, we can definitely help you there. They also notify you guys a lot about funding opportunities and grants. Like I said, those ones are a long shot, but they are worth applying for sometimes. Don't forget Kickstarter exists. You can always crowdfund. That works too. There's also different support networks, right? There's the Eco Schools Network. That's a good one. You have local environmental groups, and then something else that got cut off here, but you'll get the slides later. There's tons and tons and tons of groups. If you have a question, just go to a forum and ask. There's somebody who's encountered it before, I'm sure. So this is why best practice sharing sessions are so important. Those coffee house sessions that Global Schools program runs are exactly that. You drop in and you say your problem. You might get a solution that you've never thought of before, that it might work in your community. You may never have encountered it before. That's happened to me so many times. So that's how I found out about corporate sponsorships. I had no idea that those existed until somebody told me about them. So make sure that you're well connected. You got to be the person with the biggest network in your school. If you're an eco coordinator or you're a sustainability manager in your school, you got to be the person that knows the most people, because sustainability really does touch every single aspect of reality. So if you know the most people, you know you're doing it right. That's the big goal. I will take questions now, and as always, you're welcome to contact me. So I have my Instagram, my Global Schools email, which will be deactivated soon. So you can reach me at LinkedIn as well. But if you have any questions or comments, concerns, now is the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alexa. So there are a few questions here. One is from Anju. How can we address cultural and social barriers to sustainability practices?
How can we address cultural and sustain, what was it? Cultural and,
Social barriers to sustainability practices.
okay, this one I have a very good example of. Um, Many of you may be aware that the Middle East is the king of oil, and a lot of Middle Eastern countries have very low energy bills where the rate of electricity is quite low. So there's not a lot of financial incentive there, especially because there's a lot of wealth in these regions, or they don't even have to pay for electricity. Our network found out that 50% of the emissions from our global portfolio were coming out of 9 schools in the Middle East. There's over 100 schools in our network, and 50% of those emissions were coming from 9 schools, which is a ridiculous number. And when you look at the data even more closely, it's crazy. There's a huge cultural barrier to getting this particular region of the world to stop using so much energy. There's also environmental barriers to it, right? It's 50 degrees outside in the Middle East sometimes, so it's hot. You have to use a lot of aircon. When we went to the schools and we audited the schools with the students, we realized that a big reason why the energy consumption was so high was because they were leaving the doors open with the aircon blasting, the windows open, everything was open, but the aircon was down at the lowest setting. So if it's 50 degrees outside and all that hot air is coming in and you're trying to cool it down to 16 degrees without closing any of the doors or windows, obviously it's going to kick the converter to go up way higher. To get people to close the doors and windows was so difficult. It took 3 months. It took 3 months of just being like, hey, close the door. If the aircon's on, close the door. When it comes to things that are culturally different, I would say that you pick the smallest change, the smallest change you can find that will push you towards your goal, and you get so annoying about it. Like, you make the students so annoying about it. If a teacher is leaving the door open and the aircon is on, there's a student whose job it is to go in and be like, hey, miss, why is the door open? And if they come back in 5 minutes and see the door is up, they do the same thing. They just keep interrupting over and over again. That was the most successful thing that we saw. The second most successful one was we incentivized communities to do the behaviors that we wanted to have seen in that community, right? So another one was entitlement to having their room as cold as they wanted. So they would leave the aircon at 16 degrees for 6 hours to use their office for 5 minutes and then repeat the cycle, right? They felt entitled to having their room that cold. And the students had a campaign that kind of equated what the energy consumption of 5 minutes of aircon in their environment was in terms of like how many trees were cut down. And they kept posting it on the doors of the places that they were seeing doing this behavior that was negative. So it's kind of a name and shame tactic. That is one way of doing it. It is not something I recommend in all contexts because it can be quite sensitive, but incentivizing would be like, hey, if we find that your room, passes the test 3 times, then you get a bonus or a free coffee from the canteen or whatever it might be, some kind of incentive. And that's where those CSR resources can really come in handy. When it comes to things like gender equality, this one is very sensitive. That one I would really be careful because you can get in a lot of trouble really quickly in certain places. When it comes to things that are, about religious discrimination, etc., it depends on where you are. So your context is really important. Sometimes you can't win. Sometimes there is no solution. You just have to wait for policy to change. And don't ever tell your students to start an advocacy campaign that might lead to them getting in trouble or hurt or something like that. I've seen teachers do some terrible things with this, thinking it was the right thing to do. It's not. When they're adults, they can choose to do that, but do not influence them to go out and do advocacy for something that is illegal in your country. That is not the right way of doing things at all. You have to tell them that, if you think this is wrong, there are things you can do, but do bear in mind that you are not an adult yet. When they are an adult, they can make that choice for themselves. You can give them the tools on how to do it, but do not encourage them to do it if it is illegal in your country. That's my biggest advice to you.
Yeah, there's another question as well from Moshe. How do we convince institutions that ESG is a very crucial for environmental sustainability in this present? How do we convince institutions like the sustainable development goal is important and, especially for environmental sustainability?
Yes, this comes up a lot. So what you're going to do is you're going to find who those stakeholders are that may be the barrier to this. So if it's your head of school or the board that doesn't believe that this is important to put in schools already, you have to identify why they feel that way. Why do they think that this is not important? Is it just something that doesn't seem to touch their lives? Do they feel entitled to something that they're not getting? What is it? What is their biggest problem and what is their biggest concern? ESG can do a range of things, and a lot of people think that ESG is just about recycling in schools, and it absolutely is not. It's so much more than that, right? You can talk about how there will be a lot of financial savings when there are less resources used or when resources are being used in a more sustainable way. You can talk about how there's a benefit to developing green skills in students that are future skills that are not being taught in any other school in the area, which is something that would give them a leg up for getting more admissions. It might be that the board themselves are having some issues with taxes. There's a lot of sustainability and tax incentives. So if your school is actually participating in certain activities, they could save money on that. If you're going to a government school and you have a government school leader who's just like, no, I don't care about this. I don't get paid enough for this. Figure out what their biggest problem is. Maybe it's a discipline problem, maybe it's a budget problem, and find them money. Find them a way to get students who are having disciplinary problems engaged in something that's more active, like a school garden that keeps them out of trouble. Whatever it might be, find a solution to their problem. That's the best way of doing it, because once you show them a benefit that they personally find incentivizing, that's when they're going to get super on board and just stop questioning you. They're going to be like, yep, okay, I got it. Like, whatever you need to do, you fix my problem, go fix some more. So that's usually the best way of going.
Yeah, so there were a few of them were actually saying that don't use the term partnership when you are an advocate. Yes, there is difference between collaboration and partnership. Like for GSP, we have a partnership team which focuses on long-term partnership for all of you, like advocates and our resources, our reports, our research. So collaboration probably will be like a short-term project for all of you, like maybe a 3 months project, for the term. And that is a difference. That's why when you're okay, you go through a training for a certain number of months and you actually collaborate for a project for an X number of weeks or months. So that's why we encourage you to use the word collaboration more. And I've been an advocate before in 2019, and uh, I used to, sign the pledge and make projects work. I know it's not easy, but I've gone to the extent of like being an advocate at Global Schools Program gave me the credentials to actually apply for grants. Like I've applied for grants and winning grants, and you really have to have like a solid proposal, a pitch deck where you can actually go out and speak to your funders and all these stakeholders out there. So identify what kind of partnership, if you want a long-term 3 year partnership, then there's a whole different story. Like most of your projects probably maybe it's only 6 months, so you have to collaborate like for 6 months. And Alexa was mentioning about CSR. Huge companies have amazing CSR projects. Like go to their website and look for the sustainability part. I'm sure they have it on website. And they'll definitely have like a contact thing. Like if you would like to find more information, you just email them and definitely they'll come back with you like with CSR opportunities. Like some I've known is like in Malaysia we have Adidas, we have DHL, we have Petronas. These huge companies actually have amazing CSR efforts as well. And they're waiting to give you the money. They're just waiting to give you the money out there.
Yeah, they really want to give you money because it's less
Yes,
taxes for them. So they
yeah,
they would rather give it to a school than to the government, trust me.
yeah. So you were also asking about like, you were rejected being an advocate through this application, but keep on applying. There'll be definitely, application next cohort. So don't give up. We see your effort in the form of like you have applied once but you didn't give up. So we see your effort there. And those who have already selected for the new cohort, congratulations, welcome on board as well. So is there any other questions or other thoughts? Like some of you have already, collaborated more uh outside even the capacity that we could. Wait, there's a question here. Oh, do you mean the CSR project sheets or how about it? You just type out the company, any company, Google it, and you just go to, our their
Usually
sustainability.
they have
Yeah,
a tab in their website that says corporate social
yes,
responsibility, and then you can find out more about the projects, or you can message the company, like send them an email to their info site and just ask if they have any corporate social responsibility programs going on, that sort of thing, or say you would like to talk to somebody about collaborating on a project. That would be a great way. You would be amazed at how much people actually do come back to you with a response. So it never hurts. When in doubt, reach out. That's the way to go. Just be prepared with something. I would have AI help you develop a personalized letter to send to everybody that you're going to talk to. I do have to run because I have another appointment, but if you have any more questions at all that we didn't get to, just go ahead and feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or through the advocates email.
so I will quickly just take a picture if you don't mind.
Mm.
So to turn on your cameras, we'll take a quick picture before we leave. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Alexa. So if you all are all ready, all right. Okay, there we go. Okay, one, two, three. Okay, one more. One, two, three. All right. Thank you so much, Alexa. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a pleasant day. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
All right. Thank you, everybody.